Welcome back. Okay, we're staying on the story for you. There's a lot of angles that we want to try to get at for you. The New York Times publishing what they say is a portion of Donald Trump's 1995 tax return. It's his federal return. And now Trump says the New York Times broke the law. The campaign issued this statement, quote, "The only news here is that the more than 20-year-old alleged tax document was illegally obtained. A further demonstration that the New York Times, like establishment media in general, is an extension of the Clinton campaign, the Democrat Party, and their global special interests." And in fact, there is a question. Does the First Amendment cover what the New York Times did, or maybe it doesn't? Could it be illegal for, quote, any person to publish an unauthorized tax return? It used to be if a government official did it, that was unlawful. Let's get to my next guest. It's Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. How do you come in on this? What do you think? Is the law clear-cut? Could the New York Times be held liable?
Well, I think it requires an investigation. If the New York Times story is correct in the sense they said they received it anonymously and then verified it with other sources in a rigorous fashion, then they're probably free and clear. But if it's not correct, if they conspired with someone, for instance, in the government to leak the information and obtain it illegally, then there could be some liability there, in my view. But in the least, there needs to be an investigation to see. Now, supposedly these are state tax forms. If state internal revenue officials leak them, or if they came out of the federal offices of the IRS. If a government official was involved in a leak, there could be a criminal liability for that. And there have been prosecutions. I remember Bill Clinton's passport file was leaked during the Bush administration, and there were prosecutions over that.
Yeah, that was bad. And what's happening with the New York Times story is it comes fast on the heels of the New York Times executive editor saying, you know what, he'd happily face jail time in order to publish Donald Trump's long withheld tax forms. I'm not sure there's any chance, though, that he will, because I think the Times is protected by the First Amendment and the Pentagon Papers cases, right?
Yeah, if there's going to be an investigation, it's going to be into whether there was a government malfeasance here. If someone stole the records from Trump's offices, there may be a possible crime there. I think it will be kind of hard to push that. But I think there needs to be at least an inquiry with the relevant officials who had these records, either in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and in Washington, D.C., perhaps, whether these records were improperly leaked to the New York Times by any officials there.
And Tom, I'd like to get your reaction to what New York Times reporters are now saying, that they are essentially insisting they did nothing wrong. Listen to this.
We're hearing from Trump's lawyer this morning. He's actually threatening legal action against you guys in the New York Times. What are your lawyers saying about that?
Well, last time I checked, it wasn't a crime to check your mailbox. So
they're saying it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it would be a crime for someone inside one of the tax departments, one of the state tax departments, to leak the documents, but it's not a crime to publish them?
That's what our lawyers are saying.
Yeah, because according to the law, I think if it's in the public interest, right, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, that makes a certain amount of sense, but that's assuming this Times story is correct. I don't have any reason to doubt it, but there needs to be an investigation on how these documents were leaked, and the government needs to do some internal investigations in the least in those 3 states and in Washington. This is serious stuff. If a political candidate has their government files leaked illegally, and I don't know that it happened, but that's the first place you'd look, because we know the files are resident in those tax agencies in the states and in Washington, D.C.
It is a serious issue to have private citizens' tax returns leaked. Really appreciate your time.
The IRS has been caught abusing its powers.
That's a good point.
Recently. Okay. It's not like it would be a stretch.
Right. We got to leave it there. Tom Fitton, thank you so much.